What's up guys? Today we're going to check out The Flash on 4K. I'm not going to get into how good or bad the movie is, I'm just going to share some of my thoughts on the audio and video quality. Now let's go over a few tech specs. The movie was shot in 8K. It's got a 4K DI. It's rated PG-13. Runtime is 144 minutes. Aspect ratio is 1.90 to 1, and the audio is in Dolby Atmos. Before we take a look at the audio and see how active this mix is, if you don't know what the Atmos viewer is, you can find a link down below in this video's description that tells you all about it, and you can also find a list of all the gear that I use for these 4K reviews. Let's get this out of the way first. It's a digital stream, so you already know that you're gonna have to raise the volume. Luckily, it's not as bad as Transformers Rise of the Beasts. The good thing is that it's a very active Atmos mix that keeps your height channels engaged for most of the movie. There's really good lower channel movement in just about any scene that has the Flash running around. You'll hear the electricity build up and swirl throughout your room with a lot of musical extension up top. The Batwing has some good moments with it flying through the overhead channels, and the baby scene has a lot of effects that move in and out of the surrounds. And if you couldn't tell by looking at the viewer, this mix is locked in a 7.4 configuration. So if you've got more than 11 channels, they're not going to get any usage. Which is a little odd because Warner Brothers usually has the best Atmos mixes out there. The bass, however, was decent. It doesn't dig crazy low, but there's ample output at 30 Hz and above, which will give the explosions and crashes plenty of hard-hitting impact. Dialogue was alright, but I did feel it was a little bit low in certain parts, so I had to turn up the volume even more. So when the action kicked in, it was a little too loud. If you guys noticed this as well, then leave a comment down below and let me know. If you're new to the channel and you're into home theater or want to keep up with the latest and greatest in audio and video gear, tap the subscribe button for new weekly videos. And I'd also like to thank all my Patreon and YouTube member subscribers for supporting the channel and making this purchase of The Flash possible on iTunes so I can bring you, the home theater movie loving community, this 4K review. If you want to join Patreon or the YouTube membership, you can find links down below in the video's description. For video quality, you might think that since they used 8K cameras, that this might be an ultra crispy looking transfer. But just like the other DC movies, Black Adam, BVS, etc., this does have a fine layer of grain on top of the image to give it a film-like feel. It's not as heavy as any of the Snyder movies, but there is a very light layer of grain. It's still very detailed, so you can count all the wrinkles and strands of hair on Wayne's head, and the detail work on all the costumes shine through in 4K goodness. So the grain doesn't impede on the resolution. And even if you don't like grain, I don't think it's going to be enough to be bothersome. The only thing that might be bothersome is that questionable CGI, and having both berries on screen at the same time can look a little bit green screeny. As for the HDR, it's got a max CLL of 822 and a max FALL of 308. So unlike the Snyder movies or Black Adam, this one isn't as bright. The color palette is also not as dark and muted as those other movies, but it's also not as vivid as Aquaman. So I'd say this falls somewhere in the middle. There's still good saturation to make the Flash and Supergirl's outfits pop, and the specular highlights have some nice intensity as well, but it's not going to blow you away with HDR brightness. Black levels were totally fine, enhancing contrast and not crushing details down low. It's an overall really good looking transfer that should look even better on 4K physical disc. So I'm going to have to go with an 8.8 for video. Audio-wise, this is another very active Atmos mix. And if you have 11 channels, all your speakers should get a really good workout. Now, if you've got more than 11, then the static mix could leave you wanting more, especially coming from the other great DC Atmos mixes out there. It's still a great mix that follows the on-screen action properly, and the bass was really good as well. So I'm going to have to go with an 8.5 for audio. So what are your thoughts on The Flash on 4K? Have you seen it, and where would you place it in the DCEU? Would it be near the top or near the bottom? Leave a comment and let me know. Now, if you do want to pick up this movie, I will leave some links for it down below in this video's description. As always, guys, thanks for watching. If you want, you can follow us on social media, and if you want to support the channel and get exclusive content or great discounts on audio and video gear, then stop by our Patreon page. Be sure to like this video if you found it useful and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you again in the next video.